Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, Fritz Freeling, 3 stars in the Warner Brothers animation world. But animation is a collaborative art form, and there were many, many people who worked under them, helping bring the magic to life. Chuck Jones was blessed to have arguably one of the greatest animators in history on his team, and very few know his name. Who? Let's find out. Carroll Ross Harris was born in 1898 in Tulare County, California. Carroll eventually changed the spelling of his name to Carroll, then to Ken. He said people had a hard time with the spelling. So we'll just call him K. Or maybe not. That's too far. Harris started as a race car builder and driver with his brother who had a garage. Zoom, zoom. During his short career, he raced 3 times at Ascot, all in 1926. Around this time, he also worked for Reeve Gartzman, a car dealership in Los Angeles, selling cars at a Pontiac agency. Sell, before the agency eventually closed down. Close. Ken had a natural talent for art, but never attended art school. Instead, he jumped right into the art world, first for Sid Ziff, then for the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner from 1927 to around 1930. After this, he joined the Romer Gray Studio, which also closed down after barely a year between the summers of 1930 and 1931. So many closures, so little time. Also working at the Romer Gray Studio was the great Warner Brothers director Robert McKimson. Now, we do know that Harris was, quote, trained under Robert McKimson, but it's unclear exactly when that would be. Our theory was that it was here while he was working with Robert and during one of his first experiences with animation. But it's also unclear who he assisted under while at Warner Brothers. It could have also been then. We don't know. We are not detectives. We are not Columbo.
Now just, one more thing. Everybody here still remembers who Columbo is. Do I have that right? It's not been too long that people have forgotten who Columbo is? All right, very good.
Yet another unclear fact is what happened once the Romer Gray Studio closed down. We do know that he applied at Disney, but he was rejected due to his lack of formal training. Harris recounts in an interview conducted by Richard Williams in 1975, "I was an assistant from June 20th, 1935 to September 1st, 1936. I was an assistant in-betweener and then the assistant animator, but I worked nights and animated. I probably did about 400 or 500 feet of animation in that year and a half."
He started doing this stuff at 37 or 38 years old. He was a car racer and salesman. And his mother said to him in the Depression, "Why don't you do animation? They're paying a lot of money for that right now." So he took it up, and he was a natural, great athlete and musical, but he couldn't. He said, "Gee, Dick, if I could draw like you, it would be fun to animate." And I'd say, "Well, if I could animate like you, it'd be fun to animate."
Harris started in Fritz Freeling's unit from 1935 to 1938, working on such shorts as Fishtails, Porky's Pet, and Toy Town Hall. In 1939, he relocated to Frank Tashlin's unit and worked there for 5 months. Here's one of his scenes from this period.
This one is sure to get his acorn stored up now the summer is gone.
After Tashlin left and the unit was taken over by the king himself, Chuck Jones. Ken would be Jones's star animator for over 24 years, starting with The Night Watchman, which he animated with his previous coworker, Robert McKimson. Baxter from Cartoon Research writes, Harris has a propensity for smears in this cartoon, such as the drummer rat in scene 18 and Tommy's cathartic punching sequence in scene 32. He trained under McKimson, and his use of clever touches in these scenes show the influence of the studio's most gifted draftsmen. The drummer rat swallowing chocolate while performing and Tommy stepping over a defeated rat as he moves on to the next one are cleverly handled. Harris also animates the rats performing the swing rendition of In the Shades of the Old Apple Tree performed by the Sportsman Quartet. So, I think this is a good time to stop and discuss the difference in duties between an animator and an animation director, since usually, on this channel, we're discussing directors. Here is a wonderful explanation from the great Eric Goldberg.
When Chuck directs a cartoon, he does an awful lot of layout pose drawings for the animator. In fact, his pose drawings actually come before the background layouts. He'll kind of establish the space the characters are working in and their attitudes, and then they'll kind of work the background layouts around that, so he can have the freedom to express through the characters the way that he wants. And he will make a lot of drawings, really indicating one character's thought processes all the way through the entire cartoon. Now, this is really what animators use as a roadmap. It doesn't mean that the scene is pre-animated. It means rather that these are the succinct points that the animators need to hit to get this particular expression across. But animators, being great animators like Ken Harris or Ben Washam, can take that and it gives them one boost up. That gives them the clear road that they're traveling, and then they turn it into animation magic.
The animator is an actor, but he acts on the direction of the director. He does what the director tells him. And he does as he draws, as the director wants him to draw.
Chuck had wonderful animators. He had Benny Washam, who was a great animator, and Lloyd Vaughn, and Ken Harris. Ken Harris was just great.
All of these guys were tremendous animators. Even so, Chuck's personality came through.
The animator would draw the first and maybe the sixth and the eighth drawing. And then the in-betweeners will go in between each drawing.
I warn you, dearie, I'm going to worm all of your ugly secrets out of you. Tell me now, who undoes your hair?
You don't get great animators. When you get them, you want to nurture them, hold them, and help them. Ken Harris had the ability to get action into things.
Some people, Chuck Jones included, have downplayed Harris. Oh, so not king-like of Chuck Jones. This is why the animator for a short is just as important as the director. As Greg Duffel states, Ken Harris followed Jones's drawings diligently, not because he was incompetent, but because he was actually able to draw and animate well enough to keep up with Jones. Ken was extremely disciplined and focused, logical and methodical. He was terrific with numbers and mathematics in general. His planning skills were beyond anything I have ever seen in all the years I spent as an animator. Ken Harris was able to do between 40 and 60 feet of animation every week, and Chuck gave him the hardest scenes to do. The quota was 30 feet a week.
And Chuck Jones always used Ken Harris to animate the opening thing, the opening shots in the Bugs Bunny or Road, whatever it was, and the end stuff. It's like a good actor. You come exits and entrances. Come on strong as you come in and go on strong as you go out.
It was hard for us to find a definitive list of Ken Harris animation sections from the vast collections of shorts he animated, but we will go through the ones we definitely could confirm. So, political fact-checkers, don't come and shut down our channel. The first is Draft Horse in 1941.
First of all, tour de force animation by Ken Harris of this horse attempting to be drafted to show his patriotism to the army sergeant.
I'm gonna fight the enemy. Bang, 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 bang. I'll annihilate him. I'll wipe him out. That's what I'll do. I'll get him. Boom.
And a draft horse. It isn't comfortable for a horse to assume those positions.
Mississippi Hare in 1949.
I come down with the head caved in. I go back home with a pocket full of tin. Oh, day. Go on and run all night. Go on and run all day. I bet my money on the bobtail leg. Somebody bet on me.
A Bear for Punishment in 1951.
Oh, who's your best friend? It's Father, 'cause Father is your best friend.
What's Opera Doc in 1957, Hopalong Casualty in 1960. Harris and Jones worked together all the way until Jones's last cartoon for Warner Brothers, The Iceman Ducketh, in 1962, and Warner Brothers closed its animation department in early 1963. After Warner Brothers, Harris found himself floating from project to project. And folks, we're not gonna lie, these are some cool projects. First, he worked briefly for Fritz Freleng on the titles of the Pink Panther. He then moved to Hanna-Barbera and worked on their first feature film, Hey There, It's Yogi Bear. Finally, he rejoined Jones at MGM for 3 years working on Tom and Jerry cartoons. When the MGM animation department closed down in 1967, Harris followed his old boss again to work on How the Grinch Stole Christmas. After production on the short ended, Harris officially retired. So truly going out on top. You know, like Tom Brady should have done. But what is retirement for a genius? In 1967, Harris was lured to the studio of independent animator Richard Williams in London. There he served as Williams' mentor as well as his employee. You know, like Tom Brady did.
I'd already met Ken Harris, and Ken Harris was my first teacher and remained so for the next 12 years, really. And though I was his director, I was also his in-betweener. And I worked very closely with him. He's wonderful, the wonderful animator. And he was considered the best Warner Brothers animator. I met him in an elevator in London with his wife, and he came out, and I started laughing. And he said, yeah, I look like the Coyote. Coyote was kind of the Roadrunner. Coyote was him, was Ken.
Harris's credits with Williams included A Christmas Carol in 1971 as an animator of Ebenezer Scrooge.
A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you! Humbug.
The opening titles of 1975's The Return of the Pink Panther.
When I'm doing a drawing of the tail and the bum, he says, it's a bit too exaggerated, Dick. But that's a better drawing, though, isn't it? I mean, if you get that space.
I think, to me, it's still a little exaggerated.
Sticking
the
out there.
upkick there is a little exaggerated.
He hated over-animation. I mean, over-animation, like Tex Avery, is hilarious. And it can be very funny today. It's some funny. But Ken said, listen, my work's very conservative. I'm too conservative, maybe, but I just don't think it's funny to flash things around all over the place. And of course, that's why his stuff was so funny, that he would keep it very subtle. And when I learned this stuff about loosening things up, I'd be doing his in-betweens. I'd have a hand here, and it would be, Ken would say, cushioning down here, easing down or slowing down. He'd say, I'd put in a drawing here or something, and Ken would say, God damn it, what are you doing? So he'd make sure I did it right. And he said, oh, I'm too conservative, but I just think it's fun. And of course, with the Roadrunner, I mean the Coyote, when the anvil's falling on his head and the eye just goes like that, he can step out of the way but never does. And Ken would just go something like this, some very slight movement, and then thud, and the crunched up remains would run away. But Ken would underplay everything, and of course it made it 3 times as funny.
And the still unfinished animated feature The Thief and the Cobbler, where he animated the thief. Remember when we talked about that here? Link. Unfortunately, Harris's health was getting the better of him, and he retired again in the late 70s. Like Tom Brady did. In 1981, Harris was officially recognized at the Annie Awards, where Asifa Hollywood awarded Harris the Winsor McKay Award for Lifetime Achievement in the field of animation. Harris passed away on March 24, 1982 from Parkinson's disease in Woodland, California at 83 years of age. Ken Harris is widely considered one of the best animators of all time, and yet very few know his name. This is probably because he was extremely humble and wasn't as passionate about animation as others we have covered on the channel. His passion instead lay in his hobbies, which included collecting cars, of which he owned 120 in his lifetime, and playing tennis. After work, he would often go to the tennis courts in North Hollywood and play a set or two. He refereed matches in Los Angeles, and he was asked to do the same at Wimbledon, but he declined the invitation. He loved to dance and he played the recorder. He had such a fulfilling life outside of his career that it's easy to see why he didn't seek recognition for his impressive work. I guess that's why he really was one of the GOATs.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue with this picture. And, confidentially, that film didn't exactly break.
Thank you to these people for supporting us on Patreon and Ko-fi. And if you want to make sure this channel sticks around, you can check out our Ko-fi link in the description. Every bit helps. Thank you for watching this episode of Discographies. Click the thumbs up button below if you liked it. And if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked below. We hope to see you in another Discography.